of getting all this back is if we don't go over it, then there's no growth. So there's no figuring out what you got wrong and why and how you need to budget your time. Maybe you're more of a multiple choice person and maybe you're better at the open-ended. Whichever you're better at, you should be practicing the other one more. You don't want to waste your time.
Like, what's the max score you can get if you fail one section and get all the rest right?
If you look at like the answer key,
I would have gotten a 90.
it has like the raw conversions. So if you got all the multiple choice right, you would have gotten 26 points. And the 26 would have been a 92%.
Oh, great. So I don't have to care about it.
You do on the real one because open-end is actually half your points usually. This time I only made it a quarter because one question being half of your points seemed incredibly unfair. So
Well, thank you.
yeah. I also wrote, in the margins, the multiple choice answers, what I thought was easy or hard. I hope that when you look at the easy ones, you go, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. That was so dumb.
So embarrassing.
Or whatever,
I
right?
would accept there's no actual explanation for it. It literally just has the answer.
Because it's that
So-
easy.
Yeah. What question is it?
79 and 80. Or
It's
no,
the
80.
easiest one, Steve.
79 and 80?
Oh, wait. Yeah, just 80.
Okay. Alright, let's start with 79.
Well, actually, yeah.
I'm going to skip around a bit, I guess, as questions come. So we'll start with 79. You want to take a look?
You actually
So-
probably know how to explain it.
Does Steve need 79?
You can
No.
just do it.
Can we do the
Don't?
open-ended first?
No, the explanation.
What's the answer?
Oh, it is.
Then I can
What's the
understand.
answer?
79?
Yeah.
It did get it.
It's just because it goes from the top of the x-axis.
Oh, got it. Oh,
Yeah, I didn't need 79, I needed 80.
Alright, 80.
There's no explanation.
80.
I feel
Okay,
like
the reason why there's no explanation on 80 is because I did it on my calculator. The first derivative is given by that function. How many critical values does the function have? A critical value is when the derivative is what?
Zero.
Or, undefined, graph it on your calculator and look at 0 to 10 and count how many times it touches the x-axis.
That would explain a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
I did it dumbly. Wait.
You have to zoom in more.
I zoomed in all over.
You only had to look, what I would do, I hate that zoom. Zoom is so annoying because I feel like Zoom like takes the power out of your hands. You want to go and control
Yeah, and
it and
zoom
go to the
fit
window.
didn't really show you.
No, Zoom is terrible. You want to go to your window and go to the X min and make the X min 0 and the X max 10. So you're looking at that. And then if you go look at it and you're still not seeing it well enough, make your Y a little smaller so you can like really hone in on the X-axis. But it doesn't almost matter what Y is. As long as you're looking from 0 to 10, it doesn't matter how high up they show you, it should show you how many times it crosses the X-axis. So that's it. Derivative has to be 0 undefined, so just graph what they're giving you. Is that like one that's easy you can get right?
Do the box.
What,
box.
zoom box? What is that? I don't even know.
It's just, well, you can make the box of where you want to see it.
So it's basically like going to your window and
Yeah,
But it's a lot easier.
a little more efficient.
Yeah.
It's a lot
More
easier.
time efficient.
Okay. I've never used it.
It's less guessing.
Okay.
Plus the point
See.
Because you're looking at your graph at the same time. That makes sense. Alright, so I just want to take questions at this point. We will do the open-ended. Let's do multiple choice first. Number 2. Medium hard. Okay, number 2. I would not have put number 2 on there if we hadn't done that problem in class. That open-ended problem or whatever that said like, where's it, for what value of h or whatever will it have the 3 distinct zeros? So number 2 was just like an open-ended problem in the review. Okay. Without seeing that open-ended problem, it would have been, I think, really hard to do number 2. So, number 2.
You alright?
Sorry. That wasn't
Did you,
even close.
did you end up doing alright?
You suck.
Okay, for what values of h will f have 3 distinct zeros? What you wanted to do is find where it has its max and find where it has its min. And the open-ended problem that it is similar to led you through this process. So we find the first derivative of f. It's going to be 6x minus 3x squared. Set it equal to 0. There's 2 minus x. And we have critical values at 0 and 2. And make a number line.
What's that symbol?
And plug these into the derivative. So when 1, it's positive. It's negative. It's negative. All right. Okay. This is what we were supposed. This is the setup, and this is what the open-ended problem led us to. Was taking the derivative, finding the critical values, figuring out where the maxes and mins were. Okay. So that we know we have a min at 0 and a max at x equals 2. We therefore have a min at the point 0, comma, if I plug 0 in, h, and a max at the point 2, comma, if I plug 2 in, 12 minus 8, 4 plus h. So, our function, whatever it looks like, we know it's cubic, because 3 is the biggest power, we know it's negative. So its general shape is this. And it has a min at 0, comma h. So it's somewhere along here, and its max is at 2, 4 plus h. Well, to get this to have 3 zeros, the min has to be below the x-axis, and the max has to be above the x-axis. So my 0, comma h has to be somewhere down here, and my 2, comma 4 plus h has to be somewhere up here, so that when I connect them, I get 1, 2, 3 zeros. So that tells me that h has to be less than 0. I need a y value that's negative here. And 4 plus h has to be bigger than 0, so I have a y value that's up there. If this is true, then h is going to have to be less than 0 and greater than negative 4, and that's the answer. Yeah. That's a little more intricate of, well, it's a pretty intricate multiple choice problem. What?
Considering that was an open-ended in the packet.
Yeah. Okay. What else? Number 17 I thought was not super easy. Well, 17 could be a little tricky. Does anyone want to go over 17?
Yeah, I know I did.
Yeah.
Not.
It's easier than you think once you get the answers, but before that it's not. So we're basically comparing f of 1. Yep.
When you, on a grader test, do you look at the work we do?
Multiple choice?
Yeah.
No.
No, just for your own pleasure.
I don't.
Okay, that's it.
Would you like me to look at yours?
Yeah, maybe next time I'll drawing pictures.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the points
Now
we
that I said I don't look, I should probably look because Corey will probably draw something inappropriate in all of his tests. But no, I don't look at multiple choice at all.
Do we get extra points if we draw pretty pictures?
No.
Sure.
How about we draw terrible pictures?
No. So they're trying to get you to compare f of 1, f prime of 1, and f double prime of 1. Well, the tricky part is you can only figure out what f of 1 is exactly. What is f of 1?
0.
0. Because this is the function. This is f that we're looking at. So f of 1 is 0. Well, you have to think about what you know about derivatives and second derivatives, which is if a function is, well, not like that.
It's increasing, it's concave down.
Yes, thank you. Even more elementary than that is what's the slope of this? Positive or negative? Positive. I know my first derivative is positive then. Or I can also think this function is increasing, so my first derivative has to be positive. Yeah.
It says that it is the graph of the twice differential.
That's what screwed people up. All that means is f is a twice differentiable function, meaning there's no places where it's undefined, so you don't have to worry about anything crazy
But
happening.
I thought that was the graph of the second.
It's not.
Oh, that's, way to trick us up.
But it says the graph of a twice differentiable function f is shown in the picture. Yeah. It's a really weird way to word
We
it.
should get those points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, if it's twice different.
I didn't even get it wrong, but yeah.
Then I'll be
It says that.
More points.
If it says the graph shows the second derivative of the function.
twice.
More points for everyone.
Oliver did ask me that in the little test. He did.
Well, you didn't tell her he was.
I know, I didn't think about it.
Wouldn't be able to do it if it was the other way.
Yeah, the other way you wouldn't have been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's why, I don't know, that means,
It makes, that question makes
yeah,
sense,
that's what.
but
No, it's
it is what it is. So yeah, anyway, second derivative is concave down, so it's negative. So then you can compare all three.
I wrote that down and then I did it backwards.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of a cheap question.
I'm sorry.
Probably.
Number 22 was like algebra. I don't know if you got 22 wrong, but I did it like 18 times because I kept thinking I was wrong. But the square root of 1 over the square root of 2 never comes up as a solution. It's like, doesn't, you end up like, if you take the,
It was imaginary.
yeah, it was negative square root of, it was the square root of negative 1 over 2. So like, it would have been imaginary, it
It was
wasn't a
tricky.
solution. So I've never really seen them try to trick you algebraically as much as with that kind of problem.
Did. It's rude.
Number 22. If you picked A, B, or E, it was because you made an algebra mistake. Yeah. If you go find the critical values, the square root of 1/2 is not one of them. It's the square root of negative 1/2, which is imaginary and doesn't give you anything.
Oh, I thought, that's,
It is. It kind of is a cheap problem, sorry.
it's okay, I got it.
Hold on, one.
But even if you, got that, it's not the
Oh.
answer yet, but yeah, because I've gotten root negative 1/2, and I thought they just kind of ignored it, and was like, oh yeah, it's negative root 1/2. And I was like, oh, that's what it means, but either way, it's not relevant because it's zero. Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
Something like that.
Because you got it positive on both sides of it anyway.
You have negative on one side.
So you ended up getting it right.
Yeah.
There would have to be a unique sort of thing for it to.
Right. All right. Any other multiple choice questions?
No, open-ended. '81, I did think was like throwing you a bone. That was supposed to be like total gimme. Not to make you feel bad if you didn't get it, but those are the ones that you just can't miss because they're so easy.
Wait, can you do something?
77. Yes, 77 is a good question.
You got 81 wrong.
77, I basically went over the day before in a, well, kind of.
In a really simple way.
No, all I went over the day before was
That's the derivative.
that's the derivative.
Oh, I just went through it on the derivative. Yeah, exactly. That's how I did it.
Right, exactly, and you know what, Jimmy, that's what you almost had to do. Like, you could have tried to guess appropriately so that you picked the ones that made sense first, but what the original part is saying is just the derivative of g is this. The limit is g of, the limit is h approaches 0 of g of x plus h minus g of x over h is the derivative of j. That's all that's saying. The derivative of g equals this. So they're saying, so g of x could equal what? So you just go take the derivative of all 5 of these and see which one gets you to this. Obviously there are some, like a and b, that you can rule out. Really, I don't know about e, I'd have to go try it. What is the actual answer? C. I tried C first because it was already a fraction, so I'm like, if C is a fraction, it looks like this is probably going to be its derivative. But,
E itself is that.
Yeah, it's easy.
oh, true. So that's what I did. I just guessed, and I tried them.
I picked C first. Like, try to be smart about it. You don't really want to pick A and B because it's kind of obvious those aren't right, and you're going to waste your time taking the derivative of those. So skip around to what seems like it could be the answer first, and then go from there if you didn't pick right. Everyone understand that question?
Now I know.
That's good. Okay. Open-ended? Open-ended. This was from, what does it say, 2007?
Oh, so it's not relevant anymore.
It's not what, relevant? It's hard to get the 2012 questions.
Yeah, math changes that quickly. Or maybe the really esoteric math, but nothing like this.
You know, calculus 5.
Yeah, like Calc 5 or something. That might change. Not this.
Okay, people got this first and second derivatives wrong, and that's not good because they're supposed to be pretty easy at this point.
Maybe. They wouldn't
So
bother.
this is x to the 1/2, so we have 1/2k x to the negative 1/2 minus the derivative of the natural log of x is 1/x. I would put the derivative of x on top, which is just 1. So I had this simplified as k/2√x minus 1/x. You want to start to become comfortable too with like what you're getting points for. I think it was Kevin, who's not here, knew that like if you showed some stuff, at least he'd get a point. So for this, you got a point for the derivative, and then a point for the second derivative, which I took from here and have negative 1/4. Oops, k's on the top. X to the 3/2 plus 1/x squared. And there was 1 point for that. Okay, so the first part was 2 points. You'll see it in the answer key part. It's the typed out section that's printed right from their website, the scoring like rubric for the problem. Okay, for what value of k does f have a critical point at x equals 1? So, they're asking, where does the first derivative equals 0 or undefined when x equals 1? Without that piece of information that x equals 1, you really are pretty stuck. So, let me read it again. Okay. You have to plug 1 into the derivative and then figure out where it equals 0 and what value for k that happens at. Otherwise, you've got two variables, and what are you supposed to do? So, plug in 1. So we've got k/2 minus 1 equals 0, k equals 2. You did get 1 point for setting the derivative equal to 0, and 1 point for solving for k. So far, and this is the way a lot of these are set up, you're expected to be able to get like 3 or 4 of the points. And in this case, I think you should have been able to get 4 of the points, or at least 3. The first derivative, the second derivative, set the first derivative equal to 0. Even if you had x's in here, they gave you that point, that the derivative was equal to 0. And then another point for solving for k.
Correctly or just
What's that? Correctly. Yeah, sorry, correctly. Okay, then it asks you, Star Wars question. Determine whether f has a relative minimum or maximum, or neither, at x equals 1. Justify your answer. So, I knew now that k equals 2. I don't know if I did too much work for this or not. I went back to my first derivative and I plugged in k. And, okay, crossed out my 2's. And I set this equal to 0. And I actually didn't quite. I wanted to be really careful, so I actually got a common denominator if you look at my work. So I I can set the top and bottom separately equal to 0, just in case another critical value came up at that spot. But I don't really know why I did all this, because I didn't actually have to do all this. I actually just had to make a number line at x equals 1 and test. So I could have just gone to my derivative after plugging in k and test. And I got negative and positive. So I knew that this was min. Another important thing to point out, those of you who did not label your number line correctly didn't get all the points. This isn't right yet. My number line has to be labeled with the first derivative on top or somewhere, minus and plus, and then the regular function, decreasing and increasing. You've really got to make that connection, and you've got to put it all there, or they're not going to give you the point for it. What's that? It's not. Like when we went over it, I kept saying like you have to have this number line. If they don't see the whole thing, they're not going to give it to you. Yeah.
And that number line was the point.
The point is just to tell the reader that the derivative changes from negative to positive there, so therefore the function changes from decreasing to increasing, and there's a
And then there's a point for justifying your answer.
and that is enough to justify your answer.
Okay.
What?
I find everything but the F. I don't get the point.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
No.
If I.
Because it's like using the pronoun it. Like they don't know what you're referring to. If you put pluses and minuses, increasing, decreasing, like they don't know what you're referring to. It's not my rule. I know it seems like it doesn't make any sense. If you don't like the chart, don't put it. You can instead write out it's a min because the first derivative changes from negative to positive at 1, and therefore the function changes from decreasing to increasing at that point. Instead of having to write all that out, you can do a number line.
How many points is this question worth?
It's always worth 9 total. So far you've got that, you've got 1 point for a min now, and you've got 1 point for your explanation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 so far. I'm sorry, I wish I could say that they will give it to you, but they won't. If it didn't say justify your answer, you don't need any of that. But once it says justified, I want the whole explanation in detail. So a number line will replace a written explanation, but you need it to be that way.
What if you wrote out the one that did circle?
If you did what?
You wrote out a little one, but you didn't circle it.
I don't know.
It's probably just.
I'll look at it.
Same.
Yeah.
Corey, I will not look.
And on mine, you didn't give me the point for setting it up equal to 0.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, please check it. I will look at it. Absolutely. Always would.
I
but-
said the wrong thing equal to 0.
If you said the wrong thing,
I said the derivative, but it's my derivative.
you should still get a point for it.
Oh, well, give me a point.
Yeah, that's one thing that
Give
Kevin
me the
did.
point.
Kevin had the wrong derivative. He set it equal to 0, and he gets a point for that. Yeah, totally. Cool. Because you got to figure one raw point is a couple percentage points. Totally worth it. So please let me look at it. Okay, part C, the part that they don't really expect anybody to get. For a certain value of the constant k, the graph of f has a point of inflection on the x-axis. Find this value of k. Okay, they're telling you two things. If it has a point of inflection, that means the second derivative was equal to 0 or undefined. So I'm going to say that second derivative is equal to 0. We know that to be true. They're also telling us that this point of inflection happens on the x-axis. If it happens on the x-axis, what's the deal with y there?
Y equals 0.
Y equals 0. So at this point, y equals 0. So my original function also is going to equal 0 at that point. I'm trying to simultaneously solve this with this. Yeah. So I'm trying, yeah. First I should say, everything that they write is usually important. So when they say it happens on the x-axis, you wouldn't think that's important, but it is. That's your other piece of information. And I talked to Kara, something that she had pointed out that I thought it's worth pointing out to everybody, is that they do use systems of equations a lot. Like you might find yourself stuck. A lot of people set the second derivative equal to 0 and then you didn't know what to do with it because it's two variables and how are you supposed to solve that? So you need a second piece of information. Go back and read it, and then maybe when you saw it's on the x-axis, you might be like, oh, so y has to equal 0 also. So now we're taking those two things and trying to solve it. So I took this and I solved that initial one for k. So k is going to equal the natural log of x over the square root of x. What did I do with that? I think I solved this for K also. So gross.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just plug it in?
I don't know. Is that easier, do you think? I don't know why. I just solved them both for K and set them equal to each other. Whatever you want to do is fine. So this is the solution for K from the first function. This is the solution for K from the second one, which reduces to 4x to the negative 1/2, right? Yeah. So here's my solution for K. Put them together. Natural log of x over the square root of x equals this. 4 over the square root of x. Now it's a lot easier. Natural log of x equals 4. So x equals e to the 4th. Duh.
Duh!
But if you look, you do get 1 point for setting the second derivative equal to 0. And then the last 2 points come from getting the equation in one variable.
Do you get a
Solving.
point for finding what K equals on that one?
Yeah, that's right.
Then yeah, that's another point.
So K equals 4 over
Root X.
e squared.
No, K on that one.
No, they want your final K.
Ah.
Yeah.
You can't circle things that aren't worth points because then I get confused and frustrated.
I'm sorry. Do you get A and B? At least, I hope.
Yeah.
Alright, are there any other questions? Okay, let me look at individual points. I need all of this back. Can you put it like all in this file? Yeah, if you need to look at another time, so
I already.
I was here. I also mentioned it here.
actually
Corey,
Matt
you're
got
not
that
from
first.
this country.
There's my beautiful Corey. That's not
Corey.
Pat him on you. Corey, I hope you fail. Wait, with the key?
And then I did solve the K, it was the wrong K, and that's another point. You said it on the.
I know, you can only go so far with that though.
I went so far, I solved my K.
See, that's not called cheating, that's called helping and being thrifty, being smart.
But I have like an 89 or something.
Take advantage of my situation. Get ahead.
Yeah, she won. I stopped.
Did we ever find that
23 is an 88.
Yeah,
You go great class.
So I gotta keep this so I can put it all back down.
every time
You go next.
See the circle that you were about to circle and just forgot.
Basically what you're saying.
That's beautiful.
You know what's actually funny?
Any other room.
Yeah, so all you didn't have was that F. I was giving you a point for it.
Because
Yeah.
I like explained it.
Yep. Wait, maybe. Hold on.
Y'all
One
be over
second.
this.
No, there's only. Wait, hold on. There's only a.
You can't give points and then take the
Wow.
There's only 2 maximum in this whole part, right?
I looked it up on the
Wait, is it necessary to still record this?